Welcome to TV Recaps. Today I will be recapping a psychological thriller. A charming book enthusiast with a troubled childhood falls in love with the woman of his dreams and develops a dangerous and unhealthy obsession for her. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for our channel. Please sit tight and enjoy the recap of the TV show, You, Seasons 2 and 3. For recap of Season 1, refer to link in description. Oh, and of course, spoilers ahead. The show begins with Joe Goldberg moving into his new apartment in Los Angeles. He has fled New York after an intense encounter with Candace, an ex-girlfriend who Joe thought he had accidentally killed. Joe has taken on a new identity, Will Bettelheim, which he stole from the real Will and imprisoned him inside a plexiglass vault in a rented storage unit. Under a new identity, Joe secures a job in the book cafe of a grocery store, Anavrin, where he meets his new love interest, Love Quinn, a young widow whose husband passed from cancer. Unbeknownst to Love, Joe has been stalking her since he arrived in LA. She works in the store kitchen and is hiding her identity as daughter of the rich Quinn family, who owns Anavrin. Love takes Joe on a food tour of the city, sparks fly between them and she kisses him. Haunted by the failure of his past relationships, Joe resists her advances. To better understand Love, Joe befriends her self-absorbed twin, 40, an aspiring director and manager at Anavrin. They hit it off and 40 begins consulting Joe on script ideas for a new movie. Meanwhile, Joe's apartment manager, Delilah, is seen squabbling with her teenage sister, Ellie, over her friendship with Henderson, a famous comedian. Delilah confides in Joe that she suspects Henderson drugged and violated her when she was 17 and has been trying to expose him ever since. Joe tries to look for dirt on Henderson by bluffing his way into his house party and stealing his laptop. 40 tags along to pitch a project to Henderson but, after getting rejected by his agent, has a drug-fueled meltdown. Joe takes 40 home and notifies Love. After putting 40 to sleep, Love has a heartfelt conversation with Joe and they have sex for the first time. Next morning, Will helps Joe hack Henderson's laptop, but could not find anything incriminating. Joe learns that Ellie is going to Henderson's house and follows her. He catches Henderson trying to drug Ellie's drink and secretly gives him a heavier dose to knock him out. Joe tries to elicit a confession from him. Henderson attempts to escape but is accidentally pushed down the stairs, killing him. Joe disguises his death as a suicide. In exchange for Will's help and assurance that he will stay quiet, Joe releases him from the vault. Joe accompanies Love to her parents, Ray and Dottie's 30th anniversary, where they will be renewing their wedding vows. 40 arrives with his new girlfriend, Amy. To Joe's horror, his new girlfriend is actually Candace. She discovered Joe's whereabouts from an online video of 40's meltdown at Henderson's. Candace then seduces 40 to get close to Joe to exact revenge on him. During their parents' wedding vows, 40, drugged out of his mind, embarrasses himself in front of everyone. Love confides in Joe about 40's affair with the family au pair when he was 13. The affair ended with her committing suicide, which left 40 deeply traumatized. After sharing a tender moment, Joe and Love confess their love for each other. Back at Anavrin, Joe is shocked to learn that Candace has convinced 40 to adapt Beck's book into a screenplay, a memoir written by Joe's ex-girlfriend before she was killed by him. After catching Candace in a lie, Love hires a private investigator to dig into her past. She breaks into Joe's apartment but is caught in the act by Love. She confronts Candace about her troubled history and in response, Candace exposes Joe's real identity and how he tried to kill her. Love confronts Joe. He admits to lying about his real identity so he could escape from Candace but denies trying to kill her. Love believes him but breaks up with him anyway. Joe is heartbroken. Later, Fincher, a police officer and Delilah's close friend, believes that Henderson was murdered, and suspects Joe might be involved. He informs Delilah, who manages to find Joe's storage unit and in it, Henderson's stolen laptop. Tipped off by his nanny Kim, Joe arrives and imprisons her in the plexiglass vault. He promises to release her in 16 hours, giving him time to say his goodbyes and leave town. Unfortunately, Joe gets kidnapped by 40 and is trapped in a hotel room until he helps 40 finish his movie script. Making matters worse, 40 drugs Joe with LSD to help with the creative process. Joe begins to hallucinate and blacks out. When he comes to, Joe receives a phone call from Love. After reading Joe's farewell letter, she forgives him and wants him to stay in LA. 40 finally finishes the script, correctly deducing that Beck's ex-boyfriend killed her in a crime of passion, not her therapist. Next morning, Joe rushes to the storage unit only to find Delilah dead inside the vault. Joe tries to retrace his steps to figure out who killed her. Joe learns from 40 that he dropped him off to visit Delilah last night while he met up with Candace. Later, Candace visits 40 and explains that the real killer in Beck's story is Joe, her ex-boyfriend, exactly like the script he has written. 40 starts looking into Beck's murder and is convinced that Joe is the real killer. Meanwhile, Candace finds out Joe was dropped off at a storage unit late last night and decides to visit. She arrives and finds Joe standing over Delilah's body in the vault and locks him in. Candace calls Love and shows her the vault to prove that Joe is a murderer. Desperate, Joe confesses everything to Love. In a shocking turn of events, Love kills Candace and confesses to Joe that she killed Delilah in order to protect him. She also admits to murdering 40's au pair lover, which was covered up as a suicide, and has had blood on her hands since young. Love plans to frame Ellie for Henderson's murder but have lawyers protect her from any legal ramifications. Joe's image of Love is shattered. In a flashback, a young Joe is frequently exposed to his father's physical abuse of his mother. To protect her, Joe kills his father. As a result, he is taken away from his mother and placed in a group home where he spent most of his teenage years. In the present, to save Ellie, Joe tries to kill Love, but stops after she reveals that she is pregnant. For the child's sake, Joe decides to forgive Love and love her unconditionally. Later, Joe finds Ellie and tells her Delilah is not coming back and sends her away with money before Child Protective Services come for her. 40, desperate to save her sister, meets Joe at Annavern for a final confrontation. 40 pulls a gun on Joe and is ready to execute him. 40 gets framed for Henderson's murder, but the Quinn family uses their connections to shut down all investigations, and as a result wipes Joe's slate clean. With the arrival of their newborn son, Henry, Love and Joe move to Linda, a wealthy suburb outside San Francisco. They find themselves overwhelmed with Henry, which strains their relationship. Joe becomes infatuated with their neighbor Natalie, wife of tech mogul Matthew Engler. Natalie invites him over for wine and they kiss, but Joe has second thoughts and leaves. Later, Love discovers Joe's secret box, filled with stolen keepsakes from Natalie, and realizes he is obsessed with her. In a fit of jealous rage, Love kills Natalie. Joe is furious that she is killed again but helps her dispose of Natalie's body anyway and creates a convincing alibi for her disappearance. The two then reconcile and make a vow to never kill again. Love opens a bakery, beneath which houses a newly built plexiglass vault. Later, their baby contracts measles and is rushed to the hospital. Next day, Gil, a neighbor, reveals to Love that his daughters, whom he refused to vaccinate, gave Henry measles. An enraged Love knocks him out and locks him in the basement vault. Realizing they cannot release Gil without leverage, Joe and Love search for incriminating information against him. Love discovers that Gil's son is responsible for a recent sexual assault case in his school. Feeling responsible for his son's behavior, Gil commits suicide. Meanwhile, Natalie's disappearance has attracted substantial media attention. Sherry, an Instagram influencer, organizes a community search for her in a forest where her location was last reported. Joe and Love decide to frame Gil for Natalie's death and plants the murder weapon with his fingerprints in the forest to be found by Sherry's search party. Joe moves Gil's body to his house and fabricates a note explaining that he was having an affair with Natalie, murdered her out of jealousy, and killed himself out of shame. Their plan worked and peace returns to Linda. 6 months has passed. Joe is now working in the library, where she befriends Marion, the librarian, and develops an obsession for her. Joe begins probing into Marion's private life and discovers she is in the middle of a custody battle with her ex-husband Ryan, a local news reporter. One night, the library's sprinkler system malfunctions, and Joe spends the night helping Marion salvage books from water damage. She opens up about her troubling teenage years spent inside a group home and connects with Joe on a personal level. Sparks fly and they kiss passionately. Meanwhile, Theo, Matthew's stepson, has been flirting with Love, who has rejected his advances so far. However, after a heartfelt conversation with Theo, Love starts to develop romantic feelings for him. Theo gets detained for driving an electric scooter while inebriated and calls Love to bail him out. He confesses his feelings for her, and they end up having sex. Later, Theo discovers that Matthew, unconvinced by Joe's cover-up story, has been illegally spying on Linda's residence to find Natalie's real killer. Theo warns Love that Matthew is spying on them. She notifies Joe and suggests that they take advantage of Theo's affection for her to gather more information on Matthew's investigation. Joe agrees, as this will distract Love, allowing him to spend more time with Marion. To get information for Love, Theo breaks into Matthew's office but is shocked to discover that he is illegally accessing security feeds all over Matterlinda. Matthew catches Theo red-handed and kicks him out of the house. Meanwhile, Love's parents, Dottie and Ray, are getting divorced. In her settlement, Dottie loses both Annavrin and her vineyard to Ray. Drunk and angry, Dottie kidnaps Henry and burns down the vineyard. As punishment, she is sentenced to rehab and Love forbids her from seeing Henry again. On the way to rehab, she confides in Joe that Love may have murdered her first husband but has no proof of it. Sometime later, Sherry reveals that she and her husband, Carrie, are polyamorous and want to try swinging with Love and Joe. Love is interested, hoping it will revitalize their dying marriage. Joe, however, agrees to the suggestion because he believes it will destroy their marriage. While Joe is having sex with Sherry, Love realizes he is fantasizing about someone else and stomps out of the bedroom. They get into a heated argument in which Love loudly asserts that she only killed Natalie because of Joe. The Conrads overhear them and attempt to escape. After an intense scuffle, Joe and Love successfully subdue and lock them in the plexiglass vault. Next morning, at Marion's request, Joe testifies as character witness for her custody hearing. Unfortunately, Ryan is friends with the judge and wins custody of their daughter. He plans on taking her to New Jersey with him. Marion is not willing to give up on her daughter and decides to go to New Jersey to be close to her. Desperate to keep Marion in Matterlinda, Joe stalks Ryan to his gym and stabs him to death. Meanwhile, Theo sneaks into Matthew's room and successfully obtains a copy of the surveillance footage. He analyzes the footage and is mortified to see Joe leaving the bakery in Natalie's car. Theo goes to the bakery to inform Love but instead finds the basement vault where the Conrads have been imprisoned. Before he could release them, Theo is stopped by Love who knocks him out with a fire extinguisher. After Ryan's death, Marion now has full custody of her daughter and make plans to leave Matterlinda with Joe. Alas, Love finds a blood-stained shirt in the bin and realizes that Joe had killed Ryan because he is obsessed with Marion. She confronts him at dinner and Joe asks for a divorce. Love paralyzes Joe with aconite and confesses to killing her first husband using the same poison. She invites Marion over using Joe's phone, planning to kill her. However, after seeing her daughter, Love could not bring herself to do it. Instead, she exposes Joe for murdering Ryan. Marion is terrified and leaves the town with her daughter. Love resolves that Joe is responsible for the failure of their marriage and decides to kill him. Unbeknownst to her, Joe has known about the poison and took the antidote beforehand. Before Love could kill him, Joe injects her with a lethal dose of aconite, killing her. After leaving Henry in the care of his co-worker, Joe stages a murder-suicide framing Love for all the deaths in Matterlinda, even his own.
When the shock wears off, and you feel safe jogging in your expensive athleisure again, remember, you can get off the hamster wheel at any time.
Peace returns to Matterlinda. The Conrads successfully escaped the vault and turned their survivor story into a book. Theo survived the attack and grew closer to Matthew during his recovery. Joe escaped to Paris where he continues his search for his soulmate, Marion. The end. Please stay tuned for the next TV recap. Comment below on what you liked or disliked about our video. Thank you for watching.